inspire by having other people on here that have their purpose. They found it, they're living it, and they're killing it. So with that said, hello, Coach Dave. How are ya?
Hi, doing good. Nice to be here with you, Dee.
Yeah, I love it. So you and I were talking a bit about a few things actually. Talking about your process. You had said, the circle. And you also talked about what your purpose is. So let's just get into it.
Cool. Well, my purpose as a coach, I would say, is pretty similar to my purpose as a human, which is to help other people achieve their, it's bigger than goals. It's self-actualization. I'm sort of a self-actualization nut. I wouldn't say I'm like, I don't have a PhD in self-actualization, but I've got, just to touch on a really important cornerstone of my history. My dad had cerebral palsy, and it was in his full body. He was wheelchair bound in the later part of his life, but he was a model of how much someone can achieve despite limitations. And for him, it was a very obvious physical limitation, which also, put him front and center with a lot of discrimination and, judgment and preconceived notions. And I consider my dad to be a pretty self-actualized guy. And, to whatever extent I have the opportunity to kind of carry on a legacy. He was also a social worker for the state of New York for about 40 years. So as a coach, I feel like I do get the chance to sort of carry the torch on of helping people achieve outcomes that are really important to them. For him, it was, getting people back on their feet and getting people back into their jobs as a vocational rehab counselor. Yeah. For me, it's more about a step or two up sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to where we're operating more in the realm of a life of total fulfillment and purpose. So, I consider it my privilege and my purpose to help others get to know themselves better so that they can deeply understand their purpose and then start to make decisions and form habits around that sense of purpose over time.
Right. I love that you had a role model that you can look up to know this stuff, because not everybody does, and not everyone had that growing up. So I love that you were able to have that, and now you're using it as well. So let's talk about your process and how you help your clients.
Yeah. So I'm trained by the Coactive Training Institute, but I also bring my own style into coaching. So I have shades of intuition as well as training that I bring in. And my process is, it's ultimately whatever the client needs is how I am committed to showing up for them during our sessions. And that can go in a lot of different directions for different coaches. But what I'm ultimately responsible for is holding a client's agenda throughout the course of their session. And if that means that we are just using something that just happened for them yesterday as an example for reframing or repositioning perspective or mindset or decision-making process, then we do that. Or if they're looking 6 months down the road at a really daunting change that they want to make in their life, and they need to get over some or work through some mental barriers or opportunities, I'm here for that as well. I sort of think of my job with my clients as like I'm like a band manager for musicians. I get to envision, challenge, cheerlead, call them on their BS. All of it, right? Because they have a dream, they have a destination, and I get the privilege of walking with them towards that destination.
It really is a privilege. It really is a privilege to be a coach and to be able to be a part of that person's life and really change. I mean, that lights my fire.
Yes, I agree. It's
100%.
It's like at some point, there was a shift in me where it was like when I was a kid, I had a dream of being a rock star and being heard, right? And that shifted at some point to being a band manager and instead being seen as supportive and helpful. And like just kind of being able to, bask in someone else's achievement. That is my achievement. I know that might sound really backwards or weird for some people. It's almost like you're sidelining yourself. But if one has an orientation towards leadership or coaching the way I know you do as well, Dee, you see the fulfillment in helping others level up or go where they want to go.
Right. And I was thinking when you were saying, we had talked about how people, not everybody has that. So it really is us sort of filling that role of the guidance and filling the role of, well, what is it that you want to be? Because of course we don't give them, the answers because we don't know the answers, right?
Yes.
So it's whatever's inside of them, which is pretty empowering. So what are some projects that you're working on, or what's some work that you want to talk about?
Cool. Yeah. I have an ebook that is in the hands of a designer right now, and it's a how-to guide on how to hire a life-changing coach. There's 5 steps in this process. It's based on my own experience for hiring coaches and also ways that I didn't hire coaches.
Right.
It also is a really good explainer for people about what the difference is between a coach in the sense of a leader and a leadership or life coach as compared to an athletic coach, a business coach, or a sales coach, or even a consultant, therapist, or advisor. We play a very, very different role. And I think there's still a lot of either unknowns or misconceptions out there about the role that we play. You just touched on something that I, talk about what lights my fire. What actually lights my fire is improvising with clients to discover their own little nugget of inner wisdom in each session, rather than imposing some amount of wisdom that I may have. Because I really strongly believe that wisdom created is far more valuable long-term than wisdom acquired, right? If I push that onto someone and they acquire that knowledge or wisdom from me, it will not have the same lasting impact compared to if they know it came from within them. So, So yeah, I've got this ebook coming out. My target is the first, second week of April. I've also gotten pretty darn serious about launching a Patreon platform page, so folks can come in and get ongoing content from me, whether it's useful, fun, optimistic, distraction from life in general,
right? Yeah,
from their friendly coach, or some behind the scenes looks at what all goes into developing a coaching practice and business. We are coaches and we are also entrepreneurs, and we have to wear both hats, and it's a lot.
It is.
And I took this path into, I consider my move into coaching not to have been a leap, but rather there was a lane right next to me. Yeah. And I just had to believe in myself enough to slide over to the left and step into the lane. And
say that one more time. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Well, but what I think is, what's challenging about it is it's in the same sense, perhaps, as like an artist. Like, I didn't come into this lane with a whole cadre of paying clients. And I didn't come into this lane with the whole world knowing that this is what I'm doing.
Right.
So it's a really interesting balance between being able to do the craft of coaching and also having to really promote the fact that I exist and have folks actually hear about me. Right. So, yeah, I think the Patreon account, if I'm being totally transparent about my motives, it's like the fact that people do pay to consume your content on that platform will be a very clear signal to me if it's valuable to people, right? And if it's not, then it's not. And that's information for me to use as a business owner and a coach. But it's also to get outside the realm of social media platforms that have algorithms that I neither know how to decipher nor really can keep up with. And
Right.
I think that there is a more direct and powerful value exchange that I can have with my followers and supporters
Yeah.
in a space like a Patreon versus like an Instagram, TikTok, or LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, you have one person that'll definitely go on
Sweet.
there. So let's talk about something that came up about, I'm thinking about failure. And the reason
Mm,
why I'm thinking about failure is because I feel like for coaches, we have to embrace failure. We
yeah.
just have to. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. Because we don't know what people like, right? So we're just throwing it out there and being like, hey, who likes it? So it's not always easy to know what people need. So
Mm.
how do you approach that?
It's a good question. I mean, with regard to, I sort of want to break the question down into
Please do.
two pieces. One is failure
Mhm.
and really the resilience and self-management process that one can undergo after failure,
Right.
which can include reflecting, deciding how you're going to move forward, and then actually acting on that, and reflecting then on what you see after you take that action.
Yeah.
That's that cycle of self-management I referenced earlier.
Yeah.
Separately from that is the topic of like getting your perspective out there as a coach and
Mhm.
seeing what lands. And I haven't cracked that code yet. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have to do it in forums like social media where a lack of interaction might not be related at all to a lack of interest. It might
Right.
be that nobody saw it because there was something more interested in the news cycle
Exactly.
that day,
Or the algorithm, and it
or
just
the algorithm, like,
yeah,
took people in a different direction. So
that's hard
one
to
commitment that I've
comprehend.
made to myself over the last, honestly, I've really kind of turned the corner on this over the last couple of weeks, is
Yeah.
to just fully back my perspective as truth to me. And if that truth resonates with others, beautiful. If it doesn't, cool. And if it's a truth that somebody else already holds as a truth, then
Mhm.
great. If I can be a mirror, or if I can be a thought starter, that's ultimately the best I can hope for with my perspectives or my, um, my, I don't know, approach,
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to hold the outcomes less intensely as embracing the process of sharing. That's really what I'm trying to hone in on, is like, what is the most effective way for me to share with the right audiences,
Right.
and kind of let the outcomes inform me, but
Right.
not let them destroy me, emotionally or in terms of morale.
That's huge. Yeah, because I like how you said, let that destroy me, because to me, I see that as you're admitting, hey, like I have the control. Which a lot of people, that makes people uncomfortable,
Mm,
that they have the control, and, maybe the reason why they're not doing something is because of a control issue. So, I think that's wonderful. So let's talk about authenticity. So you and I have talked a few times, and I love your energy. And I really think that it speaks to being authentic,
mm.
and being yourself, and just not apologizing for it. And I think a lot of us coaches, that's what we do, right? We're like, this is how it is. I'm going to be authentic. My people are right there with me. My not people, maybe they have to go to a different coach, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I have two stories for you. One is when I was in sixth or seventh grade, I was in class, and it was a part of class where we were all kind of moving around in the classroom.
Yeah.
And when I laugh, I like really squint really hard. My eyes practically close, and I'm like full blown laughing. And this kid named, I won't say his last name, but his first name was Aaron. And he
Mm-hmm.
walked up to me and he mocked the way that I was laughing. And he made fun of the way that like my eyes close and squint. And it was so my heart's racing when I think about how mean it was, right? Like, how can
Yeah.
you bring somebody down when they're like joyful, right?
Yeah.
And I found a woman who is my wife who adores my squinty eyes when I laugh. And I actually now try to like take advantage of any photo that I have where I'm
Yeah.
like smiling so hard I'm squinting,
Yeah.
because that is me. That is fully me, right?
Yep.
And you sort of just have to like block out the noise of it,
Right.
of the sort of the dark energy that you can get, right?
Yeah.
The other story is about my total fear that I used to have of being seen as a clown. Just like crippling fear of it just made me so shy when I was younger, and it's made me shy in certain business settings in my career. And I have learned to absolutely embrace that clown. I've actually written a children's book that is yet to be illustrated
Oh,
about a clown with a magic mirror who falls in love with himself because he's able to show others how much they can love themselves, right? So the clown, we all have some sort of a clown in us. We have that character that is just like gives us the ick. And
yeah.
I've learned to kind of wrap my arm around that guy and love him. And so, yeah, you know, I don't know if that answers whatever question you have, but you know, it's when it relates to serving clients, and I
Right.
think we could even move this out further to when it relates to managing colleagues, managing projects, being present in our romantic relationships. It's we are going to fall flat on our face sometimes,
Yeah.
right? And you know, it's not the trick there, but more the opportunity and the gift of falling on your face
Right.
is the chance to practice resilience afterwards.
Right. Right. And we have to fail in order to succeed. It's just, unfortunately, that's just how it goes. If you look at anybody, you know, that's famous, they're not there because they gave up once when it got hard. When it
Yep.
gets hard, when you're doing those exercises, when you're really looking at the ugly parts of yourself, you know, you're going to fail. You're going to mess up, and people may judge you on it and people may not judge you on it. I would say that your people are the ones that are not going to judge you and give you grace.
Yeah. Yes, that was the other point that I was just kind of pulling at the thread at was you find out pretty quickly from failure who's got your back.
That is an understatement.
And I think kind of tying back to the really an important piece to me about purpose is that failure without purpose can be devastating. Failure with purpose can also be devastating. And at least you know where you're trying to head.
Right.
I think that creates the opportunity for that resilience and that conviction to pick you up once you have fallen down. But failure without purpose kind of just leaves you floating out at sea.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. And that's why I love this show, right? Because we're highlighting people's purpose. And, you know, I have that same belief that, you know, you can do anything if you have a purpose, you know, and you just have to believe in the purpose. And really just stop talking about it. You know, and it's hard because I had that fear for a while. Like, I stayed in a position that, you know, I didn't feel psychologically safe, and I've learned so much, but it was still traumatic. And it made me shy. It made me fear, you know, that I wasn't good enough. And then I, you know, went through coaching and realized, heck yeah, I'm good enough. Like, I got this, you know. So it's in the way that you talk to yourself too.
Yeah.
You have to believe in yourself, and you have to tell yourself that you believe in yourself, and really tell that other person, knock it off.
Yeah. There's another little, I don't know, sort of Daveism I should probably coin at some point that I call purpose creep. And this happens to all of us, I think, in our careers when we enter into larger organizations. And it's the experience of going into a career or a company with a clear sense of purpose. And then at some point, whether it's 6 months or 6 years or 16 years, turning back around and having no concept of what our purpose is. And I think one part of how that can happen is this purpose creep. It's the purpose of the larger organism,
Right,
fully infiltrating our little organism within,
yeah,
and just completely shading over our original sense of purpose. So when a lot of people are going through a job search or contemplating their next chapter, we, and I'm guilty of it too, tend to look at the practical element of what is next. And what we also need to do is rewind, and not spend a whole lot of time asking why. Because I like to say, like, you can ask why all you want, and you still might not be happy with the answer.
Yeah, it's still going to be there.
Yep. But if we can understand what our purpose was coming into this, not just practically, but deep-seated, some might call it soul, some might, whatever you want to call it. It's that
Fire.
That undeniable sense of, yes, what lights you up. Yeah.
Go ahead. You're saying undeniable sense of.
That's it. A fire that really, we get to a point in our lives or our careers or whatever, where relationships, where we, by default, we sort of accept that the fire's kind of gone back down to the pilot light.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But here's the good news about the pilot light. It's still burning, and you have to add a propellant to it to get it going again. And sometimes that propellant is introspection. Sometimes it's travel. Sometimes it's a new relationship,
right,
or a new skill that you learn. Or it's just taking time to reflect and reconnect with it.
Yeah.
But I think that pilot light is always still there burning for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and you said it, reconnection. It's just reconnecting with yourself. You had it at some point.
Yeah.
Especially if you're someone that, had went through adversity and now you're where you are, you're resilient, for sure.
Yeah.
You have those things. So it comes down to authenticity, and it comes down to believing in yourself, because, I could tell you a million times that you can fly, but you have to believe that you can fly, right? You can't. Please don't try it. Like, please don't try it. But yeah, absolutely. I love it. So what advice would you give if you went back 10 years? And we're talking to yourself, like, what advice would you give yourself? What would you tell yourself? Don't stop this, or stop this.
I would tell myself to note it, if I'm going to use my, so I was, and probably to some degree still am, very critical of myself. If I was to look back 10 years ago and talk to 28-year-old Dave, I would say, use that critical nature you have to discern between your voices of sabotage and the voices of your allies. That's what I would tell myself. Know the difference.
Yeah, because self-sabotage is real.
Yeah.
And it happens because we're afraid.
Yeah.
Wow. So what if we go the other way? So what if future Dave,
nice.
Future Dave came here and said, "Hey, thank you." What's he going to be thanking you for?
Doing just that, because I will be coaching 10 years from now. I will be coaching 20 or 30 years from now. I know that with more conviction than I've known anything career-wise ever. And he'll be looking back, thanking me for clearing the path for me to get started. And part of that was believing in myself, and just quieting the voices. Here's what I like to say about saboteur kind of voices is, you are the director of your own film, and you have hired every member of the cast on your film. And sometimes those cast members are playing the role of saboteurs, and they come in and they completely hijack a scene. It's not your job as the director to admonish them and make them feel terrible. It's your job to pull them inside and say, hey, you're in the budget. You matter. I have you here for a reason. I have written you into this film, but this is not your scene right here and now. And I'm going to call you up when it is. And I was able to do that and fully take charge of, not my career. I had to take charge of my mindset first. The career is following.
The career follows. It's the mindset, and overcoming those limited beliefs. And a lot of them are just, like maybe it never happened when I was younger. Maybe I never had the opportunity, or there's a lot of different variables. But at the end of the day, it's how you talk to yourself, how you talk about yourself, and how you're really reflecting. And again, that's why I love the show, because it's like, you can tell you're on here. You're not BSing. This is your jam, right? This is what you were meant to do. And it's absolutely incredible that people can have that conviction without doubt. You knew the answer, you know, and I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and thank you. And and I would say the same back to you, because you're doing what I'm doing. So we're in the same boat. For me, just, it has been even down to the term life coach. I sort of cringed at that, and perhaps I'll come up with another title for what I do someday. But what's more important to me is the lesson in that, which is, Dave, you got a thing, man. You have a thing you are really good at, and you're getting in your own way of the gift, right? Now that I've gotten out of my way, it's hard growing the business, but it is a pure joy to do the craft.
Oh yeah. I tell people I'm just having fun.
Yeah.
Like, I spent a lot of years being burnt out, which is fire within. That's why I was like, I need that spark. And I had to find it within myself. Because it was unlimited, or it was limited belief on top of limited belief on top of limited belief. And when you peel that back, it really just stems again from just believing in yourself. And sometimes you just need a partner to help you, someone that believes in you as well.
Yeah. And the nature of I would love to touch on this if you're open to it, is the fact that a lot of people may say, like, well, I don't need a coach, or I don't need to pay for a coach. I have a mentor, an advisor, I have a spouse or a best friend. And I mean, no disrespect to any of those relationships that people may have, but you're at the moment where you're at right now because your current systems don't work.
Yes.
They may work for
not going to get you further.
Yeah, they may work for 1,000 different reasons. Joy, ego, pride, connection, companionship, right? Envisioning the future, whatever it may be, helping you get paid more money, whatever it may be. But it has not yet solved the problem of what is here and now right in front of you, right? So that gap, and it's not that a coach may be right for every person. Perhaps if someone needs a therapist, perhaps they need whatever that may be.
Yeah, exactly.
But the point I'm trying to make is that, oh God, it sounds so cliche, but like, you can't change if you can't admit the problem. And part of the problem in a lot of our structures in our lives as adults is, like, we're not seeing the gap that needs to be filled, or willing to, or we may see the gap, but we're unwilling to take the risk of vulnerability to engage a new person in our path.
Yeah. I think that you just hit it. Because vulnerability is huge. Because I don't want to put myself out there and then be told you suck, and even though that wouldn't happen, but in my mind it would, because not anymore, but in my mind, like, that's the mindset that I was in. Is you're talking about, grace and compassion. Like, I talked worse to myself than anyone else could. And that reflected out, which it happens, but the good thing is you learn from it and you move forward. You decide who you want to be at that moment, and then you just go for it.
Well, if it's any consolation, I can't even fathom the D that talked that way to herself, because I just don't get that kind of vibe from you. But so whatever you're doing, it worked.
It works. Keep it up. Thank
Or
you.
it's
I
working,
appreciate
like,
it. I
and
appreciate
you're absolutely right. We usually are our worst critics. Yeah.
Right. Agreed. So is there anything else that you want to share or you want to talk about?
Oh, let's see.
I'll keep talking if you let me.
Yeah, I would recommend so back to my analogy to the band manager.
Mm-hmm.
There is a wonderful I just did a little audio recording about this, but there's a wonderful documentary called Supermensch about an artist manager named Shep Gordon. You can buy Supermensch for sure on Amazon. I'm not sure where else, but it's just like a wild ride into like the heyday of rock and roll, because he managed all these bands, and then he life was calling him in a different direction, health wise and relationship wise.
Yep.
And it's a really good story too about how your passion can actually manifest in new and different ways that you would have never expected.
Yep.
Bit of a spoiler alert, but as a result of this passion that he just couldn't put the fire out on,
right,
he essentially created the space of celebrity chefs. I'll leave it at that. Go watch the film to find out what I mean. But
no, I'm doing it. So Rachael Ray, I'm just gonna say it. I love you, Rachael Ray. Please watch this. No, like I just love food in general. So yeah, for sure, I will check it out.
And, I was just having a conversation so this is a comment for like fellow coaches. I was just having a conversation with a gentleman who used to be my coach, and he's now like a collaborator of mine. And we were talking about how, if you want to read a great book about coaching, don't read a book about coaching.
Yeah, I could see that for sure, because it's more, you have to experience it. Actual experience it.
Yeah. And whether you've been doing it for a month or you've been doing it for 10 years, you will, I think, and any expert coach would tell you, there's so much about coaching that is about you bringing yourself in as a person. It's one of the things that really draws me to coaching as opposed to therapy, which is really structurally, clinically rigid, to the extent that the therapist in some schools of thought is like, in a way, sort of like non-existent. Their questions exist in the room, but almost they as a person don't exist in the room.
Right.
I'll just be totally transparent. I have no interest in living that life. When I am with a client, when I'm with a partner or a collaborator, I'm fully there and present, and I want to be. And that's one thing I do love about coaching. And that can only come through if you're allowing your style and yourself to come through. So there's great tips and tricks and tools and plenty of books about coaching. But if you really want to be inspired, read about an athlete, read a fiction book about, a world 300 years from now, right? Like just flex the mind. Yeah. And you got tools. You already got tools.
Right. Exactly. And you just have to use them. And to be honest, I just had to get to a point where I was just like, I need to get over myself. So it just happens, but I love that advice. And any coaches that are out there, Dave, I love talking to you. I think you're very smart and I love the energy. So if anybody wants to be with Coach Dave and have a nice conversation, you can leave a comment. And of course, we'll always be here as well. So thank you, Dave. I really appreciate you coming on our show and sharing what lights your fire.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, Dee. This is great.
Yeah, no problem.